And a very pleasant Tuesday evening to everyone. Welcome to Ridgecrest Talk. And on Tuesday night, as usual, our theme is sports, community sports, high school, junior high, and even the college. Tonight, Chris Livingston back again, and Christopher Livingston back again. He's going to tell us why he prefers Christopher over Chris. But we're going to talk just for a few minutes about the other fall sports. Last week we talked about Burroughs football. We're going to talk about volleyball a little bit, maybe a little bit of tennis. He's going to talk about some of the numbers for the program, and how the strengths are for the program. But we're also going to talk about some sports in general, what's going on out there. And there's, sports fans know, quite a bit. This is kind of an exciting time of year, heading into that bell lap for baseball, football just around the corner, and before you know it, it's going to be basketball season. But Christopher, let's start with your background a little bit. You're the brand new sports editor here. You've been here a few months now, and done a good job with some of your articles and covering the local high school sports. And just go ahead and tell us about what got you interested in journalism. And I know you're a graduate of Fresno State, so tell us about your experiences with the Bulldogs and you're growing up in the Antelope Valley area.
Well, long story short, when I graduated high school, I was telling a lot of people that I went to high school with that in 5 years I was going to be the best sports journalist, the best civil engineer, actually, in California. I always thought that I was going to study civil engineering and pursue that passion, but eventually what wound up happening was that I'm not really as great as math as I thought I was, and so I pursued the total opposite, and that's writing. For me, journalism is kind of something that's always been there in my life, but I never really saw it as a huge passion until I was in college. And I always liked writing, I've always liked sports, and all that good stuff. And being in Fresno, at Fresno State, I was actually able to really get some good experience. I worked for my campus newspaper there, covered Fresno State athletics, and it really kind of shows you a lot about the world of sports journalism and what people want to do, and just the right things to do, the wrong things to do, so on and so forth. So that's pretty much how I furthered my love for sports journalism, and that's how I'm here.
Mm-hmm. Now at Fresno State, did you have opportunities to do a lot of writing for the newspaper directly with different teams? And what teams did you cover the most, probably?
A lot of teams I cover were Mountain West teams. So of course, Fresno State football, men's and women's basketball, volleyball, and even more so covering some of the other teams that would come to Fresno State. So like Wyoming, Utah State, Boise State, of course, and so on and so forth. So I was really big with our conference and, went to the Mountain West Championship for basketball a couple of times in Las Vegas, 2 consecutive years. So definitely kind of just got my work cut out for me covering all those different teams.
Mm-hmm. Now, up in Fresno, for years they played at the Selland Arena. Is Selland Arena still basically used quite a bit, and where are they playing right now for?
It's used for things like CIF related championships, so maybe like the CIF wrestling championships will be over there, but now they play at the Save Mart Center, which is right on campus. Okay. So it's a lot closer than Selland Arena is. Selland Arena is downtown, out of the way. The Save Mart Center opened up in 2003, November 2003, and they've been playing there ever since. Okay. Men's and women's basketball and volleyball have their matches over there, so that's where they're at.
And do they practice at the same facility?
It depends on timing. Sometimes concerts will happen there. Funny story, actually. I remember one time I was going to go cover Fresno State men's basketball practice. And so sometimes they practice at the North Gym, which is the gym on the campus. And I go over there and I see nothing but people in yellow jerseys. I'm thinking, okay, this is a different team. This is Wyoming. And I get a call saying that, oh, no, we changed. We're practicing at Save Mart Center, which is on the other end of campus. So I had to hustle over to the other end and get over there. So it's very variable where they practice at. But mostly the two venues, the Save Mart Center and the North Gym, are where they hold their practices.
Okay. Now, is it always open for people, the Fresno State practice? Does the coaching staff let people in all the time? Or?
Not always. And that's actually a pretty big difference between covering NCAA level and high school sports, is that they tend to be very close, especially football. Sometimes they have the barrier up and things like that, and you have to respect that. That's one of the things you learn about in sports journalism, is respecting your boundaries. When the coaches say, no, we want practice closed off to the media, they'll close it off. You can probably get a word with them afterward or before. But, it's all in the name of the game of high competition and kids on scholarship. So they're definitely, doing a bunch of recruiting and getting the best people out there. So you definitely don't want to let, what the other hand, you don't want to let the other hand know what you're doing.
Sure. Are there any Jury Tarkanian statues out there is what I want to know.
No, actually. That's surprising. They do have like a jersey with his name on it up in the rafters. But no, UNLV has that statue. They have the big statue of Jerry Tarkanian. And a lot of Fresno State fans actually went over there to take a look at that statue after he passed away. And I've seen it a couple of times because UNLV hosts the Mountain West basketball tournament. But no statue yet. There's a nice Bulldog statue in Save Mart Center, though.
Okay.
So
I wonder, here's a name that you may not be familiar with because you probably weren't born yet. Boyd Grant, longtime head coach at Fresno State for basketball. And they used to call the Selland Arena Grant's Tomb. And it was a tough place to go in and win. That's when the Dogs would play in the games in the 40s. He didn't mind holding the ball and spreading things out, and great defensive coach. But hey, let's talk about I want to wait till our next segment before we go into Christopher versus Chris. But real quick here, tell us a little bit about Burroughs volleyball, what you've seen so far, and I think you've talked to Michelle Lazaro at least once, and your thoughts.
Well, similar to football, and actually with all across the board with Burroughs sports, it's again about adapting to being in the tough league. And being in the Mojave River League last year for the first time, they kind of just saw what they needed to work on and things like that. And now they're just, again, trying to avoid the costly mistakes. They're trying to work a lot more on their serving and passing. It's something that Coach Lazaro tells me that's a definite importance to the team is that make sure that they understand that aspect of the game. So definitely working on that and definitely getting the numbers in, bringing in the numbers. They had a lot of kids that signed up for volleyball initially. I believe it was about 43. So they have a lot. They had to whittle through a lot of girls, and and of course they have it spread out amongst their teams. They have a freshman, a JV, and a senior team or varsity team. So they're definitely working that out and spreading that out, and again, kind of just getting the I like to call it the farm system. Getting the freshmen and the JV teams on point so that they can continually get better.
Okay. All right, Chris, we'll have more with Christopher when we come back for our second segment. Don't go away. This is Ridgecrest Talk live right here on Tuesday night on KZGN. And welcome back. Our second segment, if you just tuned in, this is Christopher Livingston, and he's going to tell us why he prefers Christopher over Chris here in just a second. Before we ask you that and talk a little about your upbringing in the Antelope Valley area, I want to ask you about the tennis team at Burroughs, the girls. I know you've only probably been out there a few times, so the numbers for what you can see pretty good. And I don't know if you've had a chance to talk to Canole Prince, but how do things look there?
Things are looking actually very wonderful over there. I see them practicing all the time. I have had a chance to talk with Canole Prince, and the numbers are pretty good. They do have a good array of girls out there that are trying out and they're practicing. And right now, they're all about getting the workout done. Kind of just getting like the fundamentals in there and kind of just understanding like the nature of the game, especially for the newcomers. It's really important that the newcomers kind of understand that, hey, we're out there, but we're out there competitively. So he's definitely trying to stress the importance of, maintaining your cool and doing things the right way, making sure that they get the hits in there correctly, and more importantly, kind of just, learn as they go. And that's what they're trying to do this year.
Okay. Now we got to ask you, I was kind of kidding with Christopher. I said, I've known a lot of people with the name of Christopher, but they always prefer Chris. So he says, nope, I prefer Christopher. So I said, well, you know what? I'll bet once upon a time, when he was growing up, there was a very, very pretty girl that must have called him Christopher, and that's the reason I thought he would call himself Christopher, but that's not so. But tell us about your upbringing in the Antelope Valley and why Christopher.
Well, usually when I meet people, I shake their hand. They say, "What's your name?" I say, "My name is Christopher," all 3 syllables. The story about that, when I was a kid, I believe it was about first grade, we were making little name tag type of things out of those little felt letters and gluing them together. My first and last name collectively are about 21 letters long, Christopher Livingston. Well, while working on that, I ran out of letters. So I couldn't put Christopher, I had to put Chris, C-H-R-I-S, and my last name Livingston right below it. And my mother thought it was the most cutest thing ever, so she takes it and puts it on the refrigerator and leaves it there. And every time I will walk past it, you know, my little 7-year-old self will walk past that refrigerator and stare at that, and I hated it. I hated it. I mean, it was cute, you know, all colorful and things, but I did not like it because it was missing the T-O-P-H-E-R. So, and growing up, you know, people call me Chris all the time. You know, you'll call me Chris, I'll still answer to that. I have no problem with that. But I don't know, a preference for mine whenever I sign documents or write my name down or even just introduce myself. It's, hi, I'm Christopher Livingston from the Daily Independent. And that's how it goes.
Yep. And the first time I met him, it's exactly what he said. And I'm thinking, did he really just say what I thought he did? Christopher, but okay. Let's talk about a little bit more about you, high school, and what you do in high school. And that's probably where you got your interest in becoming a sports editor.
In a way, I grew up in Palmdale, actually. I did not go to Palmdale High School. I actually am a graduate of Pete Knight High School.
Okay.
One of the newer schools in the area.
Right.
I believe right now is the second newest school in the Antelope Valley, East Side being the newest high school. Mm-hmm. And I grew up there. I ran track my junior year of high school. Did a pretty good job, I thought. You know, my best time at the 400 is 55 seconds. So, you know, and as far as like my interest in sports and sports writing, it actually didn't really come so much in high school per se. It came during those years. You know, I contributed to a few blogs online and things like that. But Pete Knight is actually known for its engineering program. And so it was actually a great place for a person who wanted to go into engineering to pursue that dream, because they really kind of worked well with some of the local systems and aerospace engineers. And I remember doing things that kind of just, you know, helped bud that dream of going to engineering. But again, you know, I went to Antelope Valley College for a little bit, then College of the Desert all the way down in Palm Desert, California, near Palm Springs.
What brought you down there?
Well, basically, my family just moved over there to area.
Okay.
My mother, my sister, and I, we moved down over to the Palm Springs area. My mother actually lives in Desert Hot Springs, and if she ever sees this, I love you, Mom. But for the most part, it was just a matter of, you know, kind of just let me go ahead and regress to something that I did as a kid and had a bit of an interest in. And it's always about having fun. One of my philosophies is have fun with everything you do in life. You know, talking with you, Tom, is having fun. You know, doing the work is having fun. Going to Burroughs High School on Friday nights is all about having fun. Big philosophy of mine. So
great, man. That's great. Okay, I want to ask you about Major League Baseball right now. I know we're just a little bit early before we get to the playoff picture, but I'm going to put you on the spot again. If you had to pick teams right now from the American League and the National League, what would be your favorites?
It hurts me. I'm a Red Sox fan, and definitely they're not a team that I would have to put as making it to the playoffs. The Toronto Blue Jays are actually a very interesting team to keep your eye on. They did a lot of work during the trade deadline period. They got a lot of key players that I personally didn't think that, you know, they would be able to sign, and they're actually doing very well. They're kind of up there neck and neck with the New York Yankees. A lot of people are throwing the year 1993 at them, saying that, you know, this might be their chance to actually make it there for the first time since 1993. Keep that year in mind, because in the National League, that same thing is also happening with the Pittsburgh Pirates. They're looking at the Pirates and they're saying they're actually doing the best that they've done, you know, in the past 22 years. So it's another team that, again, there's just a lot of people still consider them as a sleeper because they're not the St. Louis Cardinals. You know, they don't have a Clayton Kershaw on the team or anything like that. You know, so they're definitely one of those teams that you definitely don't want to sleep on, you know, in the National League at least. And then another team that has surprised me all year, and I say this because I have a good friend who's a fan of this team, and that's the New York Mets. The New York Mets historically have not been really the best team in baseball, and now it's like all of a sudden it's just one of those where they've pretty much taken the surprise that the Washington Nationals were to be, you know, with their strong team and everything like that. They've actually taken, you know, a lot of the luster from Washington, and they're actually using it themselves to make the playoffs. So those are some really key teams to actually keep your eye out for, I would say.
Well, Jonas Cepeda's just hitting the tar out of the baseball.
Absolutely.
Last week against Philadelphia, they pounded out 8 home runs, which is a franchise record. 8 home runs in a single game. They went on to score 16 runs that night against Philadelphia. All right, real quick, college football. Got a game coming up, Utah and Michigan. In our last 20 seconds or so, or 30 seconds, go ahead and who's going to win that game?
Michigan, hands down. That was a bit too quick of an answer, but Michigan, hands down. You gotta love Jim Harbaugh. You gotta kind of be expectant for that. So we'll see what that happens with that. And plus, Utah beat Fresno State a couple of times in the past, and so yeah.
Okay. That's great. And welcome back to our last segment. I'm Tom Heck, Christopher Livingston with us from the Daily Independent. We've been talking a little bit about everything, and right now we want to talk about, we've talked a little bit about baseball. We just kind of went on the brink of football. Basketball not too far down the road either, but let's keep it to at least baseball right now. You know, I know you mentioned the New York Mets are playing extremely well. The Toronto Blue Jays are playing probably even better. Last week, about 10 days ago, they swept the Angels out in Anaheim. They scored 37 runs in 3 games, which was a franchise record for them. So you have got a lot of teams out there that I think have a chance to win the whole thing. I think the Blue Jays right now are as good as anybody. They acquired David Price, who was with Detroit. The Kansas City Royals are 22 games over 500. You can't rule them out whatsoever. The Minnesota Twins are trying to get their name in the box score for a wild card, and so was the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles are really struggling right now. So there's a lot of teams out there. The Dodgers and Giants, I think they're going to battle, till the end for the Western Division, and the loser of the Western Division is just going to go home. Because in that Western Division, the Giants and the Dodgers are way below the number 2 and 3 teams from the Central Division. Because as you know very well also with your daily standings, the Chicago Cubs, 22 games over 500 going into this week. They haven't been there since probably the days that they had the Model T Ford. It's been that long. And also not just not just them, but the St. Louis Cardinals and the Pittsburgh Pirates out of that Central Division. I mean, all those teams, the best records in baseball. So, and on really any given series, I could see anybody really beating anybody.
That's a bit of an anomaly nowadays, just because the NL Central, at least the past couple of years, has always been kind of viewed as one of the weaker divisions in baseball. I remember growing up, like the Houston Astros were kind of consistently up there. The Chicago Cubs back in the Sammy Sosa days were up there as well, and the Cardinals. But nowadays you're seeing like a bit of a flipping. And it's kind of refreshing to see that, especially for the Cubs, because, with Chris Bryant there hitting walk-off home runs left and right, it kind of brings in like a renewed interest. They recently just did this whole renovation to their stadium, Wrigley Field, and it's kind of refreshing to see that. As far as like the weaker divisions, at least in my opinion, the weaker divisions, I know the AL West kind of, has a bit of a, standing shifting going on right there with the Angels and the Rangers kind of at each other's throats here and there. And of course, with the whole Josh Hamilton issue that happened earlier this year, that kind of caused a little bit more friction between the two teams. The Seattle Mariners, they kind of have flares one day, and the next day it kind of seems like, what in the world is going on. Felix Hernandez allowed 10 earned runs against the Boston Red Sox, which surprised even me. So that, those teams are kind of one of those teams that when it gets down to the wild card play, now that they have that one game playoff that's going in there, you're going to see teams kind of just scrambling to fight for that spot. And September is always the month where, they boost the rosters, they bring in the kids from AAA and some from AA ball to see how they are, and they kind of make that final push toward the playoffs and things like that. But those teams like your Pittsburgh Pirates and your Toronto Blue Jays and your Chicago Cubs, who might not be able to make it as #1 in their division, but they do have to play that one-game playoff. You're going to see them play as hard as ever and really, really make a run to that open door.
Mm-hmm. And talk about the Mariners. Well, I feel bad for Lloyd McClendon. He's their first-year manager, and his stomach has kind of gone up and down. Like it's been a roller coaster ride up there. They're really the team that I thought would do a lot better that didn't do very well. And then you talk about the Houston Astros, A.J. Hinch, what a year they have had. Right now they're on the verge of potentially winning the Western Division. Seattle pretty much out, Oakland pretty much out, and the Angels kind of hanging on right there. Mike Scioscia, the tenured manager of the American League, and they're kind of up and down. They've had some injuries. C.J. Wilson's been out, David Freese has been out. And it's tough when you don't have you don't have a consistent lineup. The Angels have just juggled things right and left. But I think the National League is the one that's really going to be intriguing, because I sure would have to not want to face the Cubs for a one-game playoff with John Lester on the mound, and the New York Mets with Harvey on the mound for one game. I mean, that's a lot of fun. And the Cardinals have done all that they've done this year without their ace, Adam Wainwright. So it's it's a lot of fun, like you said, and it's just a lot of parity. And they added that extra wild card team several years ago. For years they only had the one wild card team, but makes it very interesting. Years ago, Christopher, what they did was in both the American and National League, there were no split divisions. Back in the day, it was just American League and the National League, and the two teams played for the World Series, and,
right.
and you were done. And about 1969, I believe, is when they incorporated the West and the East, and they broke things up there. Your thoughts real quick on Johnny Manziel, the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, well known because he was a Heisman winner at Texas A&M. Johnny Football, Mr. Texas Football, and he left college early after 2 years, and really didn't have a very good year last year. Got into some problems, went to drug rehab, but now he's trying to make a go of it.
Well, it's good that he's trying to do that, but I believe that the reason that drove him to all that stuff was kind of just like the heavy media attention. Some people can take it, some people cannot. That's my personal opinion about Johnny Manziel's struggles, but it'll be interesting to see how he bounces back from, battling his demons and all that stuff. Honestly, though, if you want to look at this year's rookies, I would really say pay some special attention to Mr. #1, Jameis Winston. He actually did well in his recent game for Tampa Bay. Of course, it's preseason, but it's getting to that final stretch of preseason where you're starting to see, okay, this is how he will play in a real game environment, and that's actually it's pretty exciting to see that. The Alabama kid went to Florida State. Now he's over there playing in Tampa Bay. So if Johnny Manziel does get a chance to play as much as he did, it'll be interesting to see how the #1 Heisman Trophy winners do. And you can even bring in Marcus Mariota into that conversation with being over in Tennessee and starting off over there and being the face of the franchise there too. So lots of things to kind of look forward to amongst the young people, but hopefully, like you said, Johnny Manziel is able to kind of rebound and play well.
Christopher, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you very much.
All right, don't forget Burroughs football this Friday night. You can tune in if you can't get out there. They're over at Tehachapi, 12:40 a.m. The pregame at 6:45, and Christopher will join us at halftime over there. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Ridgecrest Talk on Tuesday night. For Christopher, I'm Tom Heck, bidding you a very pleasant Tuesday evening.